Like if you were to beat someone up and you don't get, impeached or charged with crime, that would be an example.
Yeah, but I think the assumption prior to Donald Trump doing it was that you shouldn't be able to do stuff like that at all.
No, I agree with that.
But then he did do it, right?
Yeah.
And then he got impeached, and then he won the next election. So it seems like I don't know if there's a strong example set there at all.
All right, Destiny. So real quick, I just want to say that I have a proposition I want to debate you on. I'm a little bit worried that you're not going to think the proposition is pro-Trump. I think it is pro-Trump, and I can get into my reasoning for that, but I respect your time, and I don't want to. Okay. So basically, the claim is that, I disagree with, I think, a rhetorical point you were making in the first anti-Trump tour, ironically with Jake Varr. So Jake Varr claimed that he thinks the Democratic Party is a cult. You responded by asking him a question. You asked him a question. You said, okay, who is our cult leader? And then he responded by saying, I don't know. And then you responded by asking him a question. And the question was, well, isn't that kind of important? So I took that to be a rhetorical question. Okay, I took it to be that your point there was that it's important to know the cult leader if you're going to claim a group as a cult. And I disagree with that proposition. So I would take the negation of that proposition. So it's not the case that it's important that you need to know the cult leader if you're going to make a claim about the group being a cult.
I mean, like, strictly speaking, I would probably agree. I feel like I think you can probably have cults that are around ideas and stuff, although I don't know of any off the top of my head that exist that way. Can you, what are some big cults, I guess, that are generally, like, leaderless?
So I do not know any cults that are leaderless, but I would argue I don't need to know an actual real-life cult. I can make an argument that doesn't involve a real-life cult. So just to be clear, were you making that rhetorical point, do you think? I mean, I know you don't have the perfect memory, but...
When you say was I making the rhetorical point, do you mean was I just looking for like kind of a snappy response that I wasn't like, that is not something that I would logically defend to its extreme, or?
It could be that, or do you seriously think that you need to know the cult leader of a group if you're claiming the group is a cult?
Are you using, do you need to know the cult leader as a substitution for, does there need to be a cult leader, or?
If you're going to make a claim, if you're going to say group A is a cult, is it important to know whether that, for you personally, to know whether that group, what the cult leader of that group is?
I'm just making sure I understand. Like, are you saying like there's a possibility, or that this has nothing to do with the existence of a cult leader, but it has to do with whether or not every single member knows there's a cult leader?
No, whether or not the truth status of the claim, like this group A is a cult.
Yes.
Whether the person who's making that claim, if it's reasonable for them to make that claim when they don't know who the cult leader is.
I feel like you should know that. I guess it's not inconceivable that you could figure out that there is a cult without knowing the leader, maybe, but that seems highly unlikely.
Okay, so that's where we would disagree, because I think that there's a property of the common usage term of cult that part of that meaning isn't actually going to. There's not going to be a property where like the cult requires a cult leader. So for example, like if we were to have just a hypothetical, if we have a building where there's dead bodies and people worshiping Satan and you have to step over the dead bodies and stuff, I think most people would consider that a cult, even if there's not a leadership structure.
How would the cult issue new orders to cult members? What would that look like?
Well, that would be a loaded question if there's not a cult leader, but it could be just that they all like read a book or something, and then the book, and they worship it.
Yeah, but who would decide what the book is?
What's that?
Well, what the first question would be, who would decide what the book is, and then the second question would be, would I not just say that the author of that book is then the cult leader?
Well, the book, it could have been maybe a former leader that passed away or something like that, or maybe just the group. So human beings are emotional. I mean, we can just enjoy writing or something, and as a group, and then like have this emotional, weird view, bizarre, like strange view or whatever, and then.
What do you think? I guess, what is the definition of cult you're kind of working with?
So I actually don't have a fully fleshed out definition of cult. I don't even think that matters, because I'm not talking about what the definition of I'm not making any claims about what the definition of a cult means, like in general. I'm making a specific claim that it's not the case that the definition contains this property where there must be a cult leader.
Sure, I guess, but whatever, however you define cult, I imagine there's going to be some part of this that I'm going to say it's probably necessary to have a cult leader in order to have that cult work.
Oh, okay.
Like my understanding is that cults in general, like most people agree that there is some kind of like ideological conformity that's enforced on the group. There's usually because it changes sometimes to adapt to modern circumstances. You need some kind of system by which to enforce that change, and usually that comes from some kind of leader or leadership structure. That like if you had a group of people whose beliefs kind of changed based on external evidence and everything, then definitionally it wouldn't be a cult. It would just be a group of people that think a certain thing.
Even if the group of people, I guess it's kind of, I'm not gonna be honest, it's kind of hard to track what you're saying, but if even if the group of people are like torturing babies and like worshiping Satan.
Why would that? Is the definition of a cult just people that do bad things?
Well, it could be people with like extreme beliefs, like people that.
Is that a cult? If people with extreme beliefs?
Well, it would be. I mean, I don't fully flesh out view, but it would be something similarly to that. I think a lot of people would consider a building where babies are being tortured and people are worshiping Satan to be a cult.
Yeah, but what's the cult part of that?
The cult part of that, I mean, I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly why people would. I don't know exactly why they would say it's a cult, but I would imagine it has something to do with the dead bodies and the extreme beliefs that they have.
I feel like definitionally, I think when people talk about cults, they talk about like a leadership that can issue orders or can be like a source of epistemic truth for a group of people that is resistant to external or outside information that would help those people update their beliefs. So definitionally, that's why I think most people would say that cults require like leaders.
I just think that most people would want a definition of cult that would capture a building full of dead bodies and blood and all that stuff, even if there's not a leadership structure to be a cult. Like most people would want.
They would probably, but what you're talking about is behavior that would be so aberrant from the norm that it seems like there must have been somebody that was probably telling them, right? Like can you conceive of a situation where a bunch of people would come together to go to a building to worship or walk over dead bodies that doesn't get all of this information from a singular leader or a group of leaders?
No, that's a fair point. Like it's hard for me to. I would respond by just saying humans are emotional. We're animals. A lot of
yeah,
people
but emotional is not random, right? If a bunch of people started to do a particular thing that all seemed like highly like off the norm, why are they all getting where are they getting that information to go do that thing? Generally, it comes from an individual, like a leader, right?
Yeah, well, one thing I will point out that even if it's hard to conceive or whatever, I mean, the hypothetical still remains. Where like if a group were to hypothetically do that, the question is still on the table of whether or not that group is a cult. So even if it's hard for me to like imagine that situation or explain it, it's hard for me to imagine how like human body processes food or whatever. But I still know it happens. Or
I mean, it would be like if I was 1,000 feet in the air, and then you're asking like if I'm able to fly, and I say yes because I'm 1,000 feet in the air, and then you ask me how did I get there, and I say I don't know how I got there, and it's hard to think of how I got there. But if I was 1,000 feet in the air, then of my own power, then I'm flying. But like if you don't have the mechanism to get there, that seems kind of strange. Like definitionally, cults are cults because there's usually a group of people that are all doing things that society at large would think is kind of weird. And if society at large thinks a thing is weird, then generally people don't do it. So to get a group of people to do the thing that society doesn't really like usually requires them to all be sourcing some belief or something from a different piece of information or some kind of like different source of truth. And that is usually the cult leader. Like Scientology has a cult leader. ISIS had a leader. Most religious extremist groups have religious leaders. I would say for MAGA, like Donald Trump is the leader. These leadership figures are really important because without a leadership figure, then a bunch of people in a group of people would look around for other sources of truth information, and then they would leave the cult, the group, right?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Maybe we can move on to the next. Okay. So sweet. So all right. Do you think January 6th weakened democracy?
Yeah, for sure, of course, yeah.
Okay, so I think at least it's a wash, which means that I think it's not the case that it weakened democracy, and it's not the case it strengthened democracy. At the very least, it's a wash, because there's a lot of outcomes of January 6th that I believe strengthen democracy. That, at least the outcomes I'm aware of, there's outcomes that weaken it, there's outcomes that strengthen democracy, and there's a lot of outcomes that strengthen it.
Sure, so I mean, I would say that, so we're a democracy in the United States, and I think right now anywhere from 70 to 80% of Republicans don't believe in the outcome of the 2020 election. I can't think of, well, there are things that are worse for democracy than that, but I would say that that's probably one of the worst possible beliefs that could be pervasive among a population.
Yeah. So I can sort of follow the reasoning there, but just inherently, because a lot of people don't trust the election results. That inherently isn't going to convince me of anything. I mean,
So people, that's
yeah.
not true that inherently people didn't believe it. That was an explicit thing that was pushed by Trump and MAGA for a year leading up to January 6th. It was an intentional concoction from them in order to get people to do the demonstrations at January 6th.
Okay, well, just to be clear, I agree with you that there's a lot of Americans that don't believe or don't trust the election results. That's not where I'm fighting you. Well, I'm not even really fighting you on that point. I could see how that could be an outcome that weakens democracy. But I'm just saying that in the definition of democracy, you're not going to find there has to be a certain percentage of Americans.
People that trust the outcome of the elections?
Absolutely not, because you could, in theory, right? If you're defining democracy as fair and free elections, people don't get people don't get murdered for their free speech or whatever. If you have all these pillars that you're defining democracy, I don't think there's all of those things can be true. The propositions in the debate or in the definition can be true, and also barely anyone trusts the election. I think that's hypothetically.
No, I don't think that's possible.
Wait,
I think if you had a monarchy where they didn't believe in last names, I think that monarchy would fall apart pretty fast. If you had a democracy where people didn't believe in the electoral outcomes, I think that democracy would fall apart pretty fast.
No. So it could fall apart. So let's say if people don't trust the election, you could argue that they're going to riot or they're going to destroy the poll booths or whatever. That's. But just inherently, if they're not destroying the poll booths and the poll booths are there, and we still have fair, free elections, we still have free speech and everything. Just because people think that the results are bad, it doesn't follow that the results were actually that you can't vote in a fair and free election. It doesn't follow that.
I'm not sure if I would grant this, but we can move to the next point, I guess.
You got one more minute there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nathaniel.
I just think there's a lot of outcomes that strengthen that.
Give me your top one or two outcomes, I think.
Well, so Trump got impeached for January 6th. I think that might set an example for other people to not repeat January 6th. And then he also got charged with 4 crimes related to that. So that's
but didn't he didn't get convicted in the Senate, and didn't he get elected again? Didn't he isn't that the ultimate vindication of his claim that he won the election after being impeached?
Okay, but Destiny, so that's another thing. You could argue that weakens democracy, but let's just say he never got charged with a crime. Okay, compared to him being charged with a crime. Being charged with a crime inherently is counting towards my point that democracy was strengthened.
I don't think that's very true at all.
Okay, so if you could, just if Trump would never get charged with a crime, even if he didn't get punished for it, that would be worse than him never getting charged.
Well, it would be better if he didn't do the thing at all, right?
Oh, no, yeah, but that's a different claim, though. I'm just saying.
Well, yeah, but him doing the thing at all puts us here. Him getting impeached for it might put us here, but we're not even close to where we were prior to him doing the thing.
If you mean close, I'm just talking about the strength.
As in, if you had a community and a person gets murdered, and then that person who did the murder gets arrested and then jailed and then convicted and then sentenced or whatever, you could say there was some justice served in that society. But to say that isn't it didn't we serve more justice in that society than in one where no murder had happened at all? It's that's a very strange claim. I don't think I would agree with that. No, I think I'd rather the society where no murder happened at all than a society where a murderer was maybe sort of held accountable.
Well, I'm not saying it's good that it happened. I'm actually just making a descriptive claim about the strength or weakness of democracy.
Yeah, but how could you say that democracy is strengthened because a person was impeached for launching a historic attack against our system?
Well, because the reasoning would be that it set an example. So if you if you were to beat someone up and you don't get impeached or charged with crime, that would be an example.
Yeah, but I think the assumption prior to Donald Trump doing it was that you shouldn't be able to do stuff like that at all.
No, I agree with that.
But then he did do it, right?
Yeah.
And then he got impeached, and then he won the next election. So it seems I don't know if there's a strong example set there at all.
All right, final thought there, Nathaniel.
Okay, well, I'm good. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right, I appreciate it, Dustin.
All right, give it up for Nathaniel, everyone.